Official case summaries. Unaltered footage. Transparent justice. You are watching Bodycam incident reports.
Sir, turn around now. You're trespassing. Hands where I can see them.
Officer, I'm a paying customer. I haven't broken any law.
The manager wants you out. That means you leave now.
With respect, you don't get to erase my rights because you're uncomfortable.
Last warning. Do what I say or you're going in cuffs.
For what crime? Standing here while black.
Ironwood Supply was the kind of massive warehouse-style hardware store that smelled of sawdust and treated lumber. It was a place for doers, contractors, builders, and serious homeowners. On this particular Tuesday at 10:15 a.m., the store was moderately busy. The hum of forklifts and the rattle of shopping carts filled the air. Standing in aisle 14, plumbing and fixtures, was Marcus Holloway. Marcus was 62 years old. He was a powerfully built man, though his walk had a slight hitch to it, a souvenir from a life lived hard. He was wearing gray canvas coveralls that were stained with red clay and sawdust. His work boots were scuffed, and he had a pencil tucked behind his ear. To the casual observer, he looked like a laborer, maybe a handyman having a rough week. Marcus was holding two PVC elbow joints comparing the threading. He had a folded piece of paper in his hand, a meticulous diagram of a porch drainage system he was installing at his own home. He had been standing in the aisle for perhaps 20 minutes doing the math in his head, ensuring he wouldn't have to make a second trip. He didn't notice the man watching him from the end of the aisle. Brad Miller was 32 years old and had been the manager of this Ironwood Supply location for 6 months. He wore a crisp red polo shirt buttoned to the top and khaki pants that looked like they had never seen a day of work. Brad was ambitious, corporate-minded, and deeply suspicious of anyone who didn't look like the contractors who spent thousands a week. He saw Marcus, a black man in dirty clothes, lingering in one aisle, putting things in his pocket. Marcus had simply put a tape measure back in his pocket and his bias kicked in. Brad marched down the aisle, his clipboard clutched like a shield. "Excuse me." Brad said, his voice loud enough to carry. "You need to move along." Marcus looked up, adjusting his glasses. "I beg your pardon. You've been standing here for half an hour. This is private property, not a public park. If you aren't buying anything, you need to leave." Marcus blinked, confused. He held up the PVC fittings. "I am buying these. I'm just checking the measurements for my drain." "You put something in your pocket earlier," Brad accused, stepping closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for theft and loitering. You need to empty your pockets and leave the store." Marcus straightened his back. At 6 feet 2 inches, he towered over the manager. "I put my own tape measure in my pocket, young man. I am a paying customer. I have a list here, and I have cash in my wallet." "I don't care about your cash," Brad sneered. "You're making other customers uncomfortable. You look like a vagrant. Now are you leaving, or am I calling the police to remove you for trespassing?" "I am renovating my porch," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously calm. "I bought this coffee at your front counter when I walked in. I'm not going anywhere until I get my fittings." Brad Miller didn't like being told no. He pulled out his phone. "Fine. Have it your way." He dialed 911. "Yes, this is the manager at Ironwood Supply on Main. I have a transient male African-American, approximately 60, refusing to leave the premises. He's aggressive and possibly intoxicated. I need an officer immediately." Marcus stood still, shaking his head slowly. He didn't run, he didn't shout. He just went back to looking at the PVC elbows. He knew he had done nothing wrong, but he also knew that in America being right doesn't always protect you. To understand what happened next, you have to understand who these men actually were. Brad Miller saw a vagrant. He saw a man who didn't belong in his clean, well-organized store. But if Brad had looked closer, or if he had simply asked, he would have learned that Marcus Holloway was not a transient. He was a retired gunnery sergeant of the United States Marine Corps. Gunny Holloway had served 24 years. He had done tours in Beirut, Panama, and the First Gulf War. He had a silver star for dragging 3 wounded Marines out of a burning transport vehicle under heavy fire. Since retiring, Marcus had served as a deacon at the Ebenezer Baptist Church for 15 years. He was a pillar of the community. The dirty coveralls he wore were not rags. They were his work clothes. He was building a wraparound porch on the house he had paid off 10 years ago, a gift for his wife who had passed away the year before. She had always wanted a place to sit and watch the sunset. Marcus was building it with his own hands, pouring his grief and his love into every board and nail. Then there was the man responding to the call. Officer Kyle Vance was 29 years old. He had been on the force for 4 years. Vance was known in the precinct as a charger. He loved the adrenaline. He loved the chase. He viewed community policing, talking to neighbors, walking the beat as a waste of time. To Vance, police work was about hunting wolves. He was aggressive, quick to escalate, and firmly believed that his authority was absolute. Vance had a history. There were 4 complaints in his file for discourtesy and unprofessional conduct, all involving minority citizens. His sergeant had told him to tone it down, but Vance believed he was the only one doing real police work. When the call came in, transient male aggressive refusing to leave, Vance didn't hear a request for conflict resolution. He heard a challenge. "Dispatch Unit 4 Alpha is en route," Vance said, flipping on his lights even though traffic was light. He checked the computer. "Subject is aggressive 10-4. Vance created a picture in his head before he even arrived. A homeless drug addict, probably mentally ill, probably dangerous. He needed to go in hard to establish dominance. He didn't think about de-escalation. He thought about control. Do you think officers like Vance should be screened more thoroughly for aggression issues? Drop a yes or no in the comments. Back in the store, Marcus had moved to the next shelf to get a box of screws. Other customers were watching now. A woman named Sarah, a regular who recognized Marcus from church, stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said to Brad, who was standing guard at the end of the aisle. "That's Mr. Holloway. He's a deacon. I think you're making a mistake." Brad didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, please stay back. The police are on their way. This individual is trespassing." Marcus heard this. He tightened his grip on his shopping list. He had fought for this country. He had lost friends for this country. And now he couldn't buy screws for his porch without being treated like a criminal. At 10:28 a.m., Officer Kyle Vance's patrol SUV screeched to a halt in the fire lane in front of Ironwood Supply. He didn't park in a spot. He parked to block the entrance, asserting his presence immediately. He exited the vehicle, adjusting his utility belt, his hand resting casually near his holster. He walked with a swagger, scanning the entrance. Brad Miller met him at the door, eager to validate his own bias. "Officer, thanks for coming so fast. He's in aisle 14. He's big and he's refusing to follow orders." "Has he threatened you?" Vance asked, his eyes scanning the store. Well, his body language is threatening, and I think he has tools in his pockets that he didn't pay for." "I got it," Vance said. He didn't ask for details. He didn't ask what the man had actually done. He marched toward aisle 14, brushing past Sarah, who tried to speak to him. "Officer, please, I know him." "Step aside, ma'am. Police business." Vance turned the corner into the plumbing aisle. He saw Marcus immediately. A large black man in dirty clothes, back turned, looking at a shelf. To Vance, the back-turned posture was an insult. It was a refusal to acknowledge his authority. "Hey," Vance barked. "Turn around. Hands where I can see them." Marcus took a slow breath. He recognized the tone. It was the tone of a raw recruit who was scared but trying to act tough. Marcus turned slowly, keeping his hands open and visible at chest level, the universal sign of non-aggression. "Good morning, officer," Marcus said calmly. "I'm shopping for my porch." "I didn't ask for your life story," Vance snapped, stepping into the kill zone, less than 4 feet from Marcus. "Manager says you're trespassing and stealing. You need to leave now." "I haven't stolen anything," Marcus said, his voice steady, holding the officer's gaze. This was command presence, the ability to project authority without shouting. It usually worked on Marines, but on Officer Vance it had the opposite effect. Vance saw the steady gaze as defiance. He saw the lack of fear as a threat. "I said hands out of your pockets," Vance yelled, even though Marcus's hands were clearly visible holding the paper list. "My hands are right here, son," Marcus said. "I have a shopping list. I have cash in my pocket to pay for these items. I am not a vagrant." "Don't call me son." Vance stepped closer, his hand dropping to his taser. "You're trespassing. The manager wants you gone. That means you leave or you go to jail." "I have a right to be here," Marcus said. "I have broken no laws. I am a citizen of this city, and I am conducting commerce." Last warning, Vance said, his face flushing red. "ID now." Marcus moved his right hand slowly toward his back pocket to get his wallet. "I told you to keep your hands where I can see them," Vance screamed, contradicting his own order for ID. "You asked for identification," Marcus said, pausing his hand. "It is in my back pocket. I am going to reach for it slowly." "Forget it," Vance said. He decided he'd had enough. This old man wasn't cowering. He wasn't begging. He was acting like an equal, and that infuriated Officer Vance. "Turn around. You're under arrest." The atmosphere in the aisle shifted from tense to volatile in a split second. Marcus stood his ground. "Arrest for what charge, officer? Buying plumbing supplies." "Trespassing and failure to comply," Vance shouted. He didn't wait for Marcus to turn. He lunged forward, grabbing Marcus's left arm. This was a mistake. Marcus's left shoulder was full of shrapnel scars and reconstructed cartilage from an IED blast in 1991. The sudden violent wrenching motion sent a bolt of white-hot pain through the old gunny's body. "Watch the shoulder." Marcus grunted, his knees buckling slightly from the pain. "Stop resisting," Vance yelled, using the pain compliance technique to twist the arm higher, nearly popping the joint. He slammed Marcus face first into the metal shelving unit. PVC pipes clattered to the floor, bouncing with hollow echoes. The store had gone silent, but now phones were out. 3 or 4 customers were recording. Sarah, the woman from church, was shouting, "He's not resisting. He has a bad shoulder. Stop hurting him." Vance ignored them. He was in the tunnel now. He kicked Marcus's legs apart. "I said stop fighting me." "I am not resisting," Marcus said. His voice strained through clenched teeth, sweat beading on his forehead from the agony in his shoulder. He spoke loudly, clearly for the witnesses. "I am complying. You are injuring a disabled veteran. I am not resisting." Vance slapped the cuffs on. He tightened them aggressively, the metal biting into Marcus's wrists. He yanked Marcus up from the shelf, spinning him around. "You're done," Vance panted, adrenaline flooding his system. "You think you can come in here and act like you own the place? You're going downtown." Marcus looked at Brad Miller, who was standing behind the officer, looking smug but slightly nervous at the violence. "Mr. Miller," Marcus said, his voice eerily calm despite the handcuffs, "you have made a grave error in judgment. Get walking." Vance shoved Marcus toward the front of the store. They did the perp walk. Vance marched the 62-year-old veteran down the main aisle, past the paint section, past the garden center, past the cashiers. Dozens of customers watched. People were whispering. Cameras were tracking their every move. Marcus held his head high. He didn't look down. He looked straight ahead, marching with the same discipline he had shown on parade decks 30 years ago. He was humiliated, yes. His shoulder was throbbing with a fire that made him nauseous, but he would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. As they exited the automatic doors into the bright morning sun, Vance pushed Marcus toward the patrol car. "Get in. Watch your head." He didn't actually help. He shoved Marcus into the cramped back seat of the cage. Marcus sat awkwardly, his shoulder screaming in pain against the hard plastic seat. He closed his eyes for a second, centered himself, and began the mental work of survival. He wasn't a victim anymore. He was an operator in hostile territory. He needed intel. "Officer," Marcus said from the back seat as Vance got behind the wheel, "state your badge number for the record." "You'll get it when you get booked, Pop," Vance sneered, putting the car in gear. "Badge number," Marcus repeated. "And the time of arrest?" Vance laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "You lawyers are all the same. You read too many books. You're going in for criminal trespass and resisting. Hope you like bologna sandwiches." The ride to the precinct took 15 minutes. Vance spent the time talking on his radio, making jokes to other units about cleaning up the trash at the hardware store. He was high on the arrest, convinced he had just taken a dangerous vagrant off the streets. Marcus sat in silence. He was memorizing the route, the speed, the comments. He was cataloging the pain in his shoulder, assessing if the rotator cuff was torn again. He was praying for patience. "Lord, give me the strength to be still. Let your justice roll down like waters." They arrived at the station, the 4th precinct. It was a brick building that had seen better days. Vance pulled Marcus out of the car, parading him through the back entrance where the suspects were processed. "Move it," Vance said, guiding him to the booking desk. Behind the high counter sat Sergeant Tom Kowalski. Tom was 58, a 30-year veteran of the force. He was tired, nearing retirement, and he had seen everything. He was drinking a lukewarm coffee and reading a report when Vance walked in with his prize. Tom looked up. He saw Vance looking pumped up and arrogant. Then he looked at the suspect. He saw a black man in dirty coveralls, yes, but Tom Kowalski looked deeper. He saw the haircut high and tight gray, but precise. He saw the boots old but laced with a military standard cross pattern. He saw the posture shoulders back, despite the handcuffs, eyes clear and direct. "What do we have here, Vance?" Kowalski asked, his voice gravelly. "Refusal to leave trespassing resisting at Ironwood Supply," Vance said, tossing Marcus's wallet onto the counter. "Guy thinks he owns the place. Manager wanted him gone. He decided to fight about it." "I did not fight," Marcus said. His voice filled the room. It wasn't a shout. It was a projection. "I complied with all orders." Kowalski looked at Marcus. There was something familiar about that tone. It was the tone of a man who was used to giving orders, not taking them. "Uncuff him for processing," Kowalski said. "He's aggressive, Sarge. Better keep him secure," Vance argued. "I said uncuff him," Kowalski barked. "We're behind the glass. Do it." Vance rolled his eyes but unlocked the cuffs. Marcus brought his arms forward slowly, wincing as his left shoulder popped audibly. He rubbed his wrists where the skin was broken and bleeding slightly. "Empty the pockets," Kowalski said, reaching for the wallet Vance had thrown. Kowalski opened the battered leather wallet. He expected to find maybe a crumbled dollar bill, maybe a food stamp card, maybe nothing. The first thing he saw was a South Carolina concealed carry permit. That made Kowalski pause. You don't get a CCP without a rigorous background check. He flipped the flap. There it was. A Department of Defense Uniformed Services ID card. Blue, retired. Grade E, 7. Kowalski froze. He looked closer at the photo. Then he looked at the other card tucked behind it. A laminated card for the veterans of foreign wars. And behind that, a folded miniature copy of a citation. Silver Star. Kowalski's stomach dropped. He looked up at Marcus, really looking at him this time. "You're a gunny," Kowalski asked, his voice changing completely. "Retired," Marcus said softly. "1st Battalion, 7th Marines." Kowalski closed the wallet slowly. He looked at Officer Vance, who was leaning against the wall, checking his text messages, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just landed on the counter. "Vance," Kowalski said. It was a whisper, but it carried more danger than a scream. "Yeah, Sarge. You arrested a Marine gunnery sergeant." Vance frowned. "I arrested a trespasser." "This man is a retired E7. He's got a concealed carry permit, which means he's been vetted by the state. And he's got a Silver Star citation in his wallet. Vance blinked. A what? A Silver Star, you moron. It means he's a war hero. Kowalski stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. Did you verify his ID before you cuffed him? He wouldn't show it fast enough. He was reaching, I thought he had a weapon. I told you I was reaching for my wallet, Marcus interjected calmly. I told you I was a paying customer. Kowalski walked around the desk. He didn't look at Vance. He looked at Marcus. Sir, are you carrying a weapon now? No, Sergeant. It's in my safe at home. I was buying plumbing parts. Kowalski turned to Vance. The sergeant's face was purple. You profiled him. You saw a black man in work clothes and you decided he was a bum. You didn't listen to him. You didn't check his ID. You just grabbed him. Sarge, the manager said. I don't give a damn what the manager said. You are the police. You investigate. You don't just act as the manager's bouncer. Kowalski took a deep breath. Get the chief. Now. The chief is in a meeting. Get the chief. Chief of Police David Harrison was a man who believed in two things, order and honor. He had served in the Army infantry during Desert Storm. He knew the cost of service. When he walked into the booking area 5 minutes later, summoned by a frantic call from Kowalski, the air in the room was thick enough to choke on. Marcus was sitting on a bench nursing his shoulder. Kowalski was standing guard, looking apologetic. Vance was standing in the corner looking sulky and defensive. Report, Chief Harrison said. Kowalski handed the chief the wallet. Officer Vance arrested Mr. Holloway here for trespassing at Ironwood Supply. Mr. Holloway is a retired Marine gunny, Silver Star recipient. Deacon. Vance says he resisted. Witnesses apparently say otherwise. Vance didn't check ID before going hands-on. The chief opened the wallet. He saw the ID. He looked at the Silver Star card. He closed his eyes for a brief second, exhaling slowly. Then he walked over to Marcus. Gunny, the chief said, extending a hand. I'm Chief Harrison, 24th Infantry Division. Marcus looked at the hand, then up at the chief. He didn't shake it. Chief, my shoulder is dislocated, I believe. Your officer did that while I was telling him I had cash to pay for my screws. The chief lowered his hand slowly. I need medical in here, he shouted toward the hallway. He turned to Vance. The chief was a calm man usually, but his eyes were cold fire. Vance stepped forward. Vance stepped up. Chief, look, he was loitering. The manager called us. I was just... Did he threaten you? He had an attitude. He wouldn't bow down. Did he threaten you? No, sir. But... Did he produce a weapon? No, sir. Did you give him a chance to show his ID before you put your hands on him? I asked for it, but he was taking too long and I didn't like the way he was standing. You didn't like the way he was standing, the chief repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. You arrested a 24-year veteran, a man who has done more for this country than you can even imagine, because you didn't like his posture. I didn't know he was a vet. He looked like a homeless guy, Vance blurted out. The room went silent. And that's the problem, isn't it? Marcus spoke up from the bench. If I was homeless, would it have been okay to twist my arm? If I wasn't a Marine, would it have been okay to treat me like trash? You didn't respect the man, so you didn't respect the rights. The chief turned back to Vance. Badge and gun. On the desk. Now. Chief, come on for a trespassing charge. You are suspended pending an internal investigation. You profiled a citizen, you used excessive force, and you failed to conduct a basic preliminary investigation. Put them on the desk. Vance's hands shook as he unclipped his holster. He slammed his badge down. This is politics, he muttered. This is integrity, the chief corrected. Get out of my station. Vance stormed out. The chief turned back to Marcus. Mr. Holloway, I am deeply sorry. We are going to drop all charges immediately. We will drive you to the hospital to get that shoulder looked at on our dime. I hope I hope you can accept my personal apology. Marcus stood up slowly. Chief, I appreciate your background, but an apology doesn't fix my shoulder. And it doesn't fix the fact that I was humiliated in front of my neighbors. This wasn't just one bad apple. This was a man empowered by a system to hunt what he considers trash. I'm not accepting an apology today. I'll be contacting my attorney. The chief nodded grimly. I understand, Gunny. I truly do. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. The video that Sarah the church member had taken went viral within 3 hours. The title was simple: Hero Marine arrested for shopping while black. It showed everything Marcus calm and complying, Vance aggressive and violent, the snap of the arm, the perp walk. By the next morning, Ironwood Supply was surrounded by protesters. Veterans groups, civil rights activists, and community members stood arm in arm. They held signs. Heroes shop here fire. Brad Miller and dirty boots equals honest work. Marcus hired Elena Ross, a civil rights attorney known for being a shark in the water. She filed a federal lawsuit against the city of Charleston, the police department officer Vance Brad Miller, and Ironwood Supply. The discovery phase was devastating for the defense. Elena uncovered Vance's personnel file. It wasn't just 4 complaints. It was 12. 8 had been swept under the rug by a previous administration. There were emails from Vance to other officers using racial slurs to describe neighborhoods he patrolled. He was a ticking time bomb that the department had refused to defuse. Then came Brad Miller's records. It turned out Brad had called 911 19 times in 6 months. Every single call was on a person of color. Suspicious person, loitering, looking at cars. He treated the police like his private security force to keep his store pure. The deposition of Brad Miller was particularly damaging. Under oath, he admitted that Marcus had not actually violated any store policy before he approached him. He admitted he assumed Marcus couldn't afford the items. So, Elena asked him, "You saw a black man in work clothes and decided he was a thief." I was protecting the store's assets," Brad stammered. "Mr. Holloway had $400 cash in his pocket. You didn't protect assets. You attacked a customer." The city attorneys looked at the evidence, the video, the medical reports detailing Marcus's re-injured shoulder requiring surgery, the personnel files, and they threw in the towel. They couldn't put Vance in front of a jury. They would be destroyed. The settlement was historic. The city of Charleston agreed to pay Marcus Holloway $6.5 million. Ironwood Supply, desperate to save their brand as their stock price plummeted, settled separately for an undisclosed amount, rumored to be in the millions, and announced a nationwide retraining program. Brad Miller was fired for cause. He was blacklisted from the retail management industry. Officer Kyle Vance was terminated and his certification was revoked by the state board. He would never carry a badge or a gun again. But for Marcus, it wasn't about the money. 6 months later. It was a Tuesday morning, quiet and cool. The air smelled of fresh cedar and rain. Marcus Holloway sat in a rocking chair on his newly finished porch. The wood was smooth and stained a deep, rich honey color. The drainage system worked perfectly. He had bought the PVC elbows at a different store, a small mom-and-pop shop that welcomed him by name. He held a glass of iced tea, the condensation cold against his fingers. His left arm was in a sling. The surgery had been successful, but the recovery was slow. At 62, the body doesn't bounce back like it did at 22. He looked out over his lawn. It was neatly mowed. The American flag hung by the mailbox, still fluttering proudly. The settlement money was in the bank. Marcus had already used a chunk of it to start the Holloway Legal Defense Fund for veterans who were mistreated by law enforcement. He had also paid off the mortgages of 3 families in his church. But as he sat there, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired. He thought about the moment in the store. The feeling of the cold handcuffs. The way Brad Miller had looked at him with such easy contempt. The way Officer Vance had stripped away his dignity without a second thought. Credentials. That's what it had taken. It took a silver star, a military ID, and 24 years of service to prove he was a human being worthy of respect. If he had been just Marcus the plumber, or Marcus the janitor, or Marcus the unemployed, would anyone have cared? Would the chief have apologized? Would the news have covered it? Probably not. And that was the tragedy. Marcus took a sip of tea. He had won the war, but the battle for basic dignity was still raging everywhere. He watched a police car drive slowly past his house. The officer inside waved respectfully. Marcus didn't wave back. He just watched his face unreadable, a sentinel on his own porch. He was safe now, he was rich now, but he would never forget that to some people he would always be a suspect first and a hero never. This story isn't just about one bad cop or one bad manager. It's about the assumptions we make when we look at strangers. It's about the fact that respect shouldn't require a badge or a bank account. It should be the default setting for how we treat each other. Marcus Holloway shouldn't have needed a silver star to buy plumbing parts without being arrested. What do you think? Should there be stricter penalties for people who weaponize 911 against minorities? And how do we fix a system that protects officers like Vance until it's too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please share it. The more we talk about these things, the harder they are to ignore. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there.
Report officially finalized. To ensure you see future transparent records, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching Bodycam Incident Reports.